Today on World Now, all eyes on Washington, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet U.S. President Donald Trump, and growing speculation of America's possible supply of long-range Tomahawk missiles to Kyiv. The high-stake talks comes just a day after President Trump's productive phone call with Russian Vladimir Putin, raising fresh questions about the future of the war and Washington's role in it. And also ahead, reactions from Moscow and Kyiv diplomatic moves in Europe and what this meeting could mean for the balance of power in Eastern Europe. Well, this is World Now. I'm Olamide Adeyemi. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Washington for talks with U.S. President Donald Trump as the White House weighs a possible decision to supply Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles capable of striking targets deep inside Russia. Now, this meeting comes a day after President Trump's phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, which he described as very productive. Both leaders agreed to hold face-to-face talks in Hungary, while their top advisors are set to meet next week, led by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. President Zelensky, making his third visit to the United States this year, said Moscow is rushing to resume dialogue as soon as it hears about the Tomahawks. These missiles, with a range of about 2,500 kilometers, could significantly boost Ukraine's long-range strike capabilities. But President Trump appears cautious, saying Washington cannot deplete its own stockpile and needs them too. Russia's Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has warned that any U.S. move to arm Kyiv with Tomahawks will be seen as a major escalation. The talks also come at a time where Russia launched one of its biggest attacks of the year, firing dozens of missiles and hundreds of dozens on Ukraine's cities, a reminder of the ongoing intensity of the war.
Well, we talked about it a little bit, didn't say much, but I do say to you, you know, we need Tomahawks for the United States of America, too. We have a lot of them, but we need them. I mean, we can't deplete for our country. So, you know, they're very vital, they're very powerful, they're very accurate, they're very good, but we need them, too. So I don't know what we can do about that. This all went because of some really bad decisions that were made. And look what you have. You have millions of people dead. You have just a horrible, horrible situation. I'm doing it to save souls. That's all I'm doing it for. I'm not doing it for us. We have an ocean between us. I'm doing it also to help Europe. They want to have it ended, but they're unable to do it.
And global affairs analyst Jide Ojo joins me to discuss the possible outcome of this if the United States decides to send these missiles to Ukraine. Good to have you join us at this time. Right. Let's start with what message you think the U.S. is trying to send by even considering supplying Ukraine with cruise missiles at this stage in the war. Who do you think is the primary audience? Is it Moscow, is it Kyiv, or NATO allies for America?
I think that message is meant for the Kremlin. And you could see what Zelensky said, that the moment Putin had that there's a possibility of U.S. supplying the Tomahawk cruise missile, he quickly agreed to meeting with Donald Trump in another 2 weeks, and there will be an advance meeting with some senior government officials between the two countries for next week. So I think Donald Trump is trying to warn Putin that failure to agree to meeting towards ensuring ceasefire will warrant U.S. having Ukraine the requisite weapons with which it can retaliate the offensive of the Russians against us.
Back to the table, or you think it may be hardening their position?
Well, it will, as I've earlier said, is going to soften Putin's position to at least consider to meet with Trump. But that is not just the only solution. And you need to also understand that Trump has been flip-flopping on harming Ukraine with the requisite missiles and equipment. Then another time you will say, oh, we also need it. We can't afford to give it out. So there is that inconsistency on the part of Donald Trump. But don't also forget that Donald Trump has equally said that members of the BRIC should stop buying Russian oil. That is India, China, Brazil, that they should stop buying Indian oil, Russian oil, as well as even NATO should also likewise stop buying oil, crude oil from Russia, so that it will weaken the economy of Russia to continue to fight. But you know very well that China and North Korea will always have the back of Putin. Putin will definitely have this, at least I know of China and North Korea. India is non-aligned, but it can also give the requisite backing to Russia. And these are the people that if they cut ties with Putin today, will force a reconciliation or a ceasefire in the interim. But I don't see the possibility of that happening. So what Donald Trump is trying to do is, one, exploring diplomatic options, trying to see whether Georgia will resolve the issue. But it has not resolved this issue in 3 years. And he has also come to realize that despite his campaign promise that he was going to resolve the Russia-Ukraine war within days of his inauguration, it's been almost 10 months now. He has not achieved any meaningful result. Even with all the threat of ceasefire, threats to Russia to accept ceasefire within 14 days, which was the last month of August. All of that has come and gone with nothing happening to Plus are many. Russia is just to tighten nuts and bolts of pressure on Russia, and that seems to be working to some extent.
Dr. Joe, some will say that he has achieved commendable results when you look at what's going on with the Israel-Hamas war. While we will focus on the position of BRICS at this time, let's look at the reaction, especially from Washington, how likely this is going to play out. President Trump may have described his call with Putin as very productive. Perhaps we're seeing an end to this war with a summit in Hungary. But how do you interpret the role of the United States in terms of, diplomacy? They've been, trying to supply arms to Ukraine and also serving as a peacemaker. Is it possible to reconcile that?
Well, the point is, in diplomatic circle, nothing is completely off the table. There are different aces that you use at different times. Don't forget that this is not an aggression against US per se. It's an aggression against an European country in whom US has interest. And US, even if it facilitates peacemaking, it's not doing it for charity. Don't forget the mineral deals that US had signed with Ukraine to explore some of the valuable solid minerals in Ukraine as a means of recouping whatever investment that U.S. is making in bringing back peace to Ukraine. So it's all about a game of chess. I see this like a game of chess between U.S. and Russia. Don't even forget that from the phone discussion yesterday, Donald Trump is saying that when the war in Ukraine is over, he wants an improvement in the trade relations with Russia, which then means that this is more of economic advantage to both countries, both Russia and the US. And Ukraine is just like a pawn on the chessboard of these two great nations. And when you compare what Donald Trump has been able to achieve between Israel and Gaza, it's like comparing apples and oranges. While Donald Trump can dictate to an extent to Benjamin Netanyahu to accept a peace deal and threaten Gaza, threaten Hamas to either accept this peace deal or go into ruination. A similar threat has not worked against Russia. And for a good reason that I've mentioned earlier, that Russia has the backing of China, has the backing of India, has the backing of North Korea, and some other powerful interests. So you cannot just threaten Russia with war without also causing trouble with China, with North Korea, with perhaps India, and even Brazil. So
and with this influence that Russia has, Dr. Ojo, with this influence that Russia has, how will this move be interpreted, rushing to resume dialogue when hearing about the release of missiles to Ukraine? Dr. Ojo, Zelensky has stated that Russia is rushing to resume dialogue at this time. Like I mentioned before the break, how do you think Moscow's move will be, interpreted? Would you see this as a sign of weakness? You mentioned that they have, more backing than Ukraine at this time.
Hello?
Dr. Joe, I'm hoping you can hear me. I was talking to you about Ukraine.
I didn't get the tail end of your question,
right,
Olamide.
Right, I'm about taking it. I'm asking you if you're going to interpret Russia's move to resume dialogue as perhaps a sign of weakness or perhaps a tactic for dialogue. Well, we're having difficulty connecting to Dr. Jide Ojo. He's talking to us about the recent talks in the United States where Zelensky has stated that, Russia is rushing to resume dialogue. Dr. Ojo, I'm hearing you're back with us. Talk to us about how you interpret Russia's move to resume dialogue. Do you see it as a sign of weakness?
Well, it's a strategy. It's not a sign of weakness, Olamide. It's a strategy. Keep them talking. They've been talking since January. Don't forget, the first meeting between Zelensky and Donald Trump was February 28th or thereabout. And there have been several talks between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Even our physical meeting in Alaska mid-August has not changed anything. So it's just to keep talking. Well, this is somebody that you had a phone discussion with yesterday. And then overnight, there was a massive attack on Ukraine. What does that tell you? That, we can do and undo as we like. So Russia is not accepting to meet with Donald Trump as a sign of weakness. Rather, it's a reality check. Let me hear what you have got to say. Then I will weigh and consider. If it's favorable, I will accept. If it's not, fighting continues. And you could see that the fight is lopsided. Ukrainians are the ones getting killed and no other NATO members have been allowed to send troops to support Ukraine. Meanwhile, North Korea has sent a battalion or two to support Russia. So, and as the Hungarian president said, if you give Tomahawk cruise missile to Ukraine, two things are likely going to happen. One, it will escalate the tension between Ukraine and Russia, so it will endanger whatever peace moves is being made. And even Ukraine itself does not even have the launcher for the missile. The Ukrainian Navy does not have the requisite ship through which they can launch this. So, and US may not be willing to give its own ship to go and launch that missile. So it's still a very dicey situation, in my own view, for Ukraine. And, you know, part of the demand of Russia is that there should be ceding of some part of about 20% of Ukraine to Russia, particularly the areas around Crimea and Donetsk or somewhere. So, meanwhile, Zelensky has said he will not cede any of the territory of Ukraine to anybody. So the fight will continue for as long as it will possibly be. And here we are talking of the victim being Ukraine. But as I've told you, Ukraine is like a pawn on the chessboard of international powerful countries. Because even at the level of United Nations, there has not been an agreement on sanctions against Russia. Every time the UN wants to sanction Russia, Russia will veto it, China will veto it, and it will go. It cannot hold. Even if Britain, France, and US stand together, in as far as China and Russia.
I'm so sorry to cut you. Let's talk about the location of this summit. I'm hoping you can hear me. The location of this summit being NATO, Hungary rather, a NATO country with pro-Russian leanings. Do you think this is quite symbolic for Trump towards rebalancing, or an approach by the United States towards expanding its diplomatic landscape?
Of course, it is a approach. When the territory of US, at least right now, of course, historically, it's initially belonged to Russia at some point and all of that. But after that Alaska meeting, recall what Putin said, that the next meeting should be in Moscow. And of course, Trump will not want to go to Moscow because of the backlash of public opinion, even though we know Trump has a soft spot for Putin. So accepting to meet in Budapest, Hungary, is like a mid approach for the two leaders, so that it will not be, it's kind of face-saving. While Trump doesn't want to go to Moscow, Putin will not want to come to America or American territory for the second time in a row. So accepting to meet in Hungary, more so that Hungary, though a NATO country, has a pro-Russia government in place. All
right. The talk is expected to hold today. This is the third time Zelensky will be visiting the United States. There are expectations as to what the outcome of the talks with the president will be. That's a fine place to leave the conversation for now. Dr. Jide Ojo, thank you for talking to us.
My pleasure, Olamide. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend.
And you too.